Hi, this is Anthony. Welcome back to my show. It's been a while since I've done any DB Cooper videos, and today's is a little bit different than the ones I've done in the past. This is based on some information that I found while I was doing a video or research for a video on Robert Rackstraw, who most of you in the Cooper sphere know was a suspect that the FBI identified early on. Seems that he was cleared, and then later on Thomas J. Colbert came along and found him again, and wrote a book called The Last Master Outlaw, proposing that Rackstraw was D.B. Cooper. And then there was a History Channel documentary by the same name that was created and broadcast. And so this is an amicus brief written by Rackstraw in a case where Colbert was suing the FBI for more information. So Rackstraw, who has a criminal past that's not in doubt, he claimed to have crashed a plane to cover up a disappearance. You know, he tried to disappear by faking his own death in an airplane crash. He is connected to the murder of his stepfather. He was arrested for illegally working in Iran, supplying the government with helicopter training and things like that. So he's not a choir boy. But anyway, he wrote this brief in support of the FBI against Thomas J. Colbert. And I'm going to point out that there's a lot of legal terms. Most of them Rackstraw uses incorrectly. He confuses the plural and the singular, mixes those up a lot. I don't speak Latin. I've looked up how to pronounce some of these terms. Some of them I may skip. If you're more familiar with the terms, I may mispronounce them. Please excuse that. Before I start reading, what I noticed about his writing style, which he points out he's not a lawyer, but it's very reminiscent of how sovereign citizens write documents. They tend to use a lot of legal and Latin terms, even if the document is not a legal document. But they use those terms to try to give their point of view or their arguments more legitimacy. Because in our culture, if you're using Latin, it seems to give more legitimacy than if you're using English terms that mean the same thing. This is a legal document, so of course he's throwing in a lot of legal terms, even though often they're completely incorrect. Not just grammatically incorrect, but they are used incorrectly. Later on in the document, which I probably won't cover, he's using terms that are only used in real estate law in this type of defamation case. And he also tends, just like sovereign citizens, to use a lot of superfluous words. There's a phrase in here where he says the Republic of the United States of America. Well, that's not the name. A republic is the type of government that we have. It's a federal republic, actually. But the country's name is not the Republic of the United States of America. But he and other people tend to throw things in just to make it sound even more technically correct. But that's really reminiscent of students who have to write a paper of a certain length, either number length or page length, where they just toss in a lot of superfluous words that don't add anything to it and really slow it down. So I'm going to show slides of the document. Of course, this is a public document. Nobody's being doxxed. Rackstraw is now deceased, so none of this information is useful in contacting him. It's civil action number 16-1790, poor man's amicus curiae. Throughout the document, he refers to himself as a disabled homeless veteran. This is concerning what he says. D.B. Cooper, fake news, murder for hire, lying in wait, conspiracy, economic and personal terrorism, unjust enrichment, extortion, defamation, libel and slander per se, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional and mental duress, physical duress and injury, violations of FTC, ADA, Veterans Act et al., and others to be determined pending $1 billion and treble damages complaint permission by leave of the court. And he refers to lying in wait and murder for hire. He argues that the authors or reporters in the book or in the documentary series, by waiting for him to talk to him, that's tantamount to lying in wait in conspiracy of a murder for hire. But obviously, he wasn't murdered by these reporters that were waiting to talk to him about the case. So he says, amicus curiae, the plaintiffs in this case said that they could duplicate another boondoggle similar to what was aired by the national and international media back in April 1986 that featured Geraldo Rivera hell-bent on revealing Al Capone's vault, another false news ruse by the media conglomerate conspiracy to fool the public and everyone involved. And I'll point out that a lot of things he capitalizes, which is typical of sovereign citizens and other conspiracy nuts, capitalizing entire words to give emphasis on their argument that it's fake or sensational. So he continues. So here it is again with copycat plaintiffs doing the same thing in the D.B. Cooper Norjack case. Now this amici thinks that the court conspiracy for the American public and everyone involved. So here it is again with copycat plaintiffs in this case. Now, this amici thinks that the court might want to consider that. No, the plaintiffs have the wrong envelope. It's not clear what he's talking about there, but somebody has an incorrect envelope, perhaps address. 1. This is a friend of the court submission by Robert W. Rackstraw, hereinafter referred to as Bob Rackstraw, who is not an attorney and cannot afford one, is a disabled homeless veteran, and has a strong, vested, and personal and constitutional interest, rights, and views in the subject matter of this action and the case at bench, and is not a party of this action, who is petitioning for leave of the court for permission to file a brief that suggests a rationale consistent with his own views concerning matters of a broad and great personal and public interest and constitutional interest, and his civil and personal and constitutional rights of himself as a disabled veteran and senior citizen, and similarly situated individuals, the general public, and the Congress and President and Vice President of the Republic of the United States of America, regarding the plaintiffs' fake news journalists, their editors, producers, and their sponsors, which in the case at bench are destroying our nation and our personal, civil, and constitutional rights in combination with economic terrorism and premeditated murder for hire, lying in wait ambushes for unjust enrichment and illegal use of a person, and the utilization of technology to Photoshop pictures, edit, distort, and change voice communications, and amass a huge pile of manure for the international media specifically and intentionally designed to falsify history and destroy the lives of their targeted victims, like the amici Robert Rackstraw in this case, by the plaintiffs in this case, who told him that as a disabled, homeless, aged veteran, he is an easy target. Now that's all one sentence. The people of the United States of America are also a real party in interest. 2. Venue. It is established by this court is the proper venue, as this case is already before it. Please excuse the format and grammar. Amici is not a legal writer and begs the court's indulgence and understanding of the fact throughout this brief. 3. First legal question. Although Bob Rackstraw is not a party in this action, his name and person are splattered negatively throughout the plaintiff's complaint and succeeded in permanently destroying his life and that of his family. just as the plaintiff promised to do. The defendant, FBI, and DOJ closed the D.B. Cooper Norjack case, and much to the chagrin of the plaintiff, did not assist him in selling his book, Last Master Outlaw, LMO, replete with everything except proving that Robert Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper, which allegedly is the reason for the original FOIA request. To wit, to obtain information about the Norjack case. Then what? To give it back to the FBI after they speculate, lie, falsify, and fake the event even more than they have at taxpayers' expense? Therefore, without his permission and refusal to confess to a crime that he did not commit, Mr. Rackstraw and his property were brought into this case without his permission as a continuing victim in perpetuity of the plaintiff's assaults, both mental and physical, as well as continued harassments from grocery store tabloids to media conglomerates on an international level. Wherein the plaintiff, and here I'm going to use English words instead of his incorrect Latin, wherein the plaintiff moves this court to allow this amicus brief to be received as a submission to this court, such as this court may and can rule and declare the law, constitutional law, and acts by Congress and agencies et sequential on the issues raised in this poor man's amicus curiae, and respectfully moves the court to order a few things at the end of this brief. And again, please excuse the lack of legal writing skills et al. And of course, et al. Means et alia, which means and others, meaning other people, but that doesn't mean anything at the end of this. He really probably means etc. 4. Comes amici Robert W. Bob Rackstraw, who begs the court's indulgence in this matter and respectfully requests the court's permission and moves the court to declare the law for an unrepresented, disabled, and homeless veteran plaintiff who is suffering greatly and permanently damaged, including a heart attack, as a direct causal and intentional act of the malicious plaintiffs, and each of them from an unrelenting conspiracy of fake news and murder for hire and lying in wait, clearly described in LMO Supra, Federal Crimes of the Federal Tort Claims Act et sec, and economic terrorism, unjust enrichment, illegal use of amici, Bob Rackstraw, likewise in property with malicious, intentional, unscrupulous design or designated media gang and thugs hired by and co-conspirators and accomplices of Thomas Colbert, TJC, Jim Forbes, and Mark Zaid, Esquire, et al. The plaintiffs in this case, clearly described in LMO book and paid for by their pre-programmed producers, LMNO, Ted Skillman, and he lists a bunch of people. It's not necessary to list all of these people because it doesn't add anything to what's being said. And other producers within, to wit, the owners, board of directors, producers, editors, and employees of the History Channel, Hearst Corporation, Disney Corporation, A&E and its owners and affiliates, NBC, and reproduced and aired by CBS, CNN, AP, Reuters, and others, and their sponsors to be named. Partial list attached. See Exhibit 1. And he lists over 100 sponsors that he claims were sponsors of the History Channel and should give him money later on, as they provide the money for the plaintiff's criminal and unconstitutional crimes and activities and civil and unconstitutional offenses, and as such are designated as purposeful, willing, and intentional accomplices and co-conspirators who seek any information that would prove that Bob Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper, as stated in a fake and false and international press release and Associated Press release, AP, by one Mark Zayed on or about the 16th of July 2016. Mark Zayed had maliciously and flatly and knowingly falsely stated that Bob Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper, which maliciously and intentionally damaged Bob Rackstraw mentally with duress and permanent damage, physically and emotionally, forever in perpetuity. by the failed attempts to prove that Bob Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper to the FBI with a parachute and money that the agency requires. That's all they have to do. Like Price Waterhouse, they have the wrong envelope. And we are told from reliable sources that a lot of people are looking for their money from Colbert and his gang of sponsors, including the sponsors he defamed. If it pleased the court, some of this should be considered a complaint as the evidence is before it. 5. Fact. Plaintiff Tom Colbert, TJC Consulting, LLC, and Mark Zayed as counsel, in their book, which is a document submitted to the court within this case and is incorporated by reference throughout this brief as to the information contained within it and the History Channel's continuing airing, also in the complaint submission of D.B. Cooper, case closed, and as such are not new submissions or additions to this case. Plaintiffs have stopped so low utilizing others internationally at their disposal, and now specifically this court, in this particular case, as their own personal relations, PR, and marketing office and newsstand for Colbert's book, wherein the plaintiffs declared disdain for our government, the media, specifically the History Channel, see complaint pages 4 to 5, paragraph 8 to 9, and the FBI on numerous pages, page 20, paragraph 10, and now this court. Inferring that with plaintiff's apparent idol, Heinrich Himmler, historical examples as guidance, Colbert could do a better job at destroying innocent people up to this time with impunity, which he infers that he learned at CBS, and an individual known as Clark Suris, who told him, "Throw enough crap at the wall and something will stick, even if it's false," as he did it all the time. Which, with the rulings and orders of this court, will bring this false news concept to a screeching halt with the court's justice for all decision. 6. The defendants, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the DOJ, the Department of Justice, and most of the personnel with them are noteworthy and without a doubt considered the finest and most professional institutions and personnel on the face of the earth, serving in their respective investigative capacities, forensic labs, and other stuff. Sometimes, as in most government agencies, their leadership's decisions are questioned. 7. Fact. The defendant FBI, as a federal agency, has the full legal authority to refuse to release information under the FOIA under 9 categories, 8 of which are probably applicable to this case. Obviously, if the FBI had in its evidence the parachute and the money, the Bureau would not take the position of reopening the case once it received that evidence from someone else it already had. Therefore, it is also obvious that the plaintiffs at this case only desire access to add to their huge manure pile and have stated on many occasions that they do not need tangible, reliable, and truthful evidence to destroy and or murder someone. Only more names. Please see the stick figure drawing in Exhibit 2, and I'll show that. 8. Facts. The plaintiffs and each of them have now, end of February 2017, stooped even lower as scam artists in their self-created cesspool and swamp, now utilizing this court as their personal platform to spread rumors and disinformation as their personal public relations newsstand, dishonoring and humiliating, defaming, extorting, bribing, fraud, misrepresenting, intentionally inflicting mental and emotional and physical duress and distress with malice and with foresight that led to a heart attack, malicious and intentionally destroying the constitutionally protected and personal rights of Bob Rackstraw's person and his property, and by impersonating without the permission of Bob Rackstraw in violation of and including but not limited to the ADA, Federal Privacy Act, Veterans Rights Act, Federal Tort Claims Act, the personal constitutional rights of Rackstraw and his family, individual citizens, as well as the History Channel, the Hearst Corporation, Disney Corporation, A&E, and the owners and sponsors of the aforementioned and the U.S. government, the FBI, DOJ, and now this federal court of the justices of the bench of all courts who do not agree with them under false pretenses and Fifth Amendment abuse of process and fraud upon the court et sec. 9. Plaintiff and each of them are now utilizing the AP, Reuters, and other national and international global news sources, all the way down to grocery store tabloids, to ensure large financial and unjust enrichment rewards to the plaintiffs at the expense of Bob Rackstraw, his name and person et al. All unconscionable event that this court should not allow. Legal maxim: he whose risk a thing is done should receive the profits arising from it. The unjust enrichment of the plaintiffs and their gang continues to this day and must be stopped. Their bank accounts and properties ordered seized by this court. It's interesting that it appears that the plaintiffs and each of them have duped other media personnel, corporations, sponsors, and the general public, and are also attempting, by virtue of this case, are trying to get this court to do their marketing for them. 11. The plaintiff in this case is Tom Colbert et al., counseled by Mark Zayed Esquire, by reference both of whom demanded that Bob Rackstraw confess to a crime he did not commit or suffer the consequences of personal destruction and the wrath of the media conglomerates under their control, wherein they would use individuals in the corporate media that they and their co-conspirators function with to attain that end. They have. 12. Thomas J. Colbert, also known as TJC Consulting, who holds himself out as a journalist only this particular case in an obvious ruse to avoid paying court fees to this court. However, in a different scenario, Colbert is now telling old school friends, associates, media personnel, etc., of Bob Rackstraw on a weekly basis, stating that he, Colbert, is a History Channel and Hollywood producer and a PR person for the fake news media, seeking only negative information about Bob Rackstraw, suitable for editing and redacting. In addition, we are told promising information, fees, and rewards, confirmed by media in the northwestern U.S. So much for the Journalist's Code of Ethics. Society of Professional Journalists, SPJ. 13. Colbert also tells us that he worked at CBS for over a decade and has alluded to the fact that he is deeply entrenched in the type of unethical conduct that he learned there and is now employing with murder-for-hire interviews et al. That resulted in Dan Rather of 60 Minutes, CBS fame, being set up as the scapegoat for lying and fake news as depicted in the movie Truth, starring Cate Blanchett and Robert Redford, marketed as a true documentary, and refers to individuals like the plaintiffs at CBS. This brings up the question of how Rackstraw's sister died shortly after plaintiffs ambushed her, that resulted in her death a short time later, under strange and conspicuous circumstances, and just prior to the $65,000 in cash that Colbert promised to pay her for information, photos, and data. Of interest to this court, the FBI, IRS, and JCE, see exhibit et al. 14. In fact, Tom Colbert offered Bob Rackstraw 2 5-figure cash advances, also an LMO, which is currently of interest to the IRS if he, Rackstraw, would only confess to a crime, the D.B. Cooper case, Norjack, that Bob did not commit, assuring him that a 7-figure amount would probably be forthcoming, which was also confirmed by Colbert's co-conspirator attorney, one Mark Zayed, an attorney who has been turned in under formal bar complaints and is under investigation for fraud, extortion, and unethical conduct by various bar associations regarding his conduct in this matter. See attached letter from Bar Ethics Committee. See Exhibits 4, 2 pages, and 5, 1 page. Now, I read that letter. He filed a complaint which was sent to the wrong jurisdiction. He alleges that this attorney is being investigated by various organizations for fraud, extortion, and unethical conduct. Just because he alleges that, we don't have any evidence of that, so don't think that this attorney really is necessarily under investigation by any legitimate bar association for any of those things. So just keep that in mind. 15. In addition, Mark Zayed also assured Bob Rackstraw that he would represent him as his counsel for any legal actions that would be forthcoming as a result of a coerced false confession to a crime he did not commit. Also, Mark Zayed was not licensed to practice law in the state of California at the time, wherein the Bar Association of that state is also investigating his illegal, unethical, unconscionable conduct. 16. Further, Bob Rackstraw was told by Colbert and Zayed that the media and the History Channel in particular were headed by easily controlled idiots, that if he did not confess to a crime he did not commit, that he would suffer, through the actions of Tom Colbert and Mark Zayed et al., a total destruction of his person and his family in perpetuity. Note, Bob Rackstraw is 73 years old, the family patriarch, father of 6 children, grandfather of 14 children, and great-grandfather to be in March of 2017. When Rackstraw asserted that untruths about him exploited by anyone, including the media, would not only libel and slander per se, extortion and fraud, and be unconstitutional and unjust enrichment, as he would not and did not approve of his name and likeness as a personal property at all in any content or context, notwithstanding it being a grievous violation of the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics, SPJ, Colbert laughed, quote, "Do you really think the media, mogul idiots, and sponsors really care about the truth or constitutional rights of individuals?" Unquote. As it turns out, plaintiffs' control over the alleged idiots with fake news, terrorism, and premeditated murder, lying in wait, and intentional and malicious infliction of mental, emotional, and physical distress, and stomping on the constitutional rights of individuals turned out to be correct. So a cease and desist order was sent to the History Channel, see Exhibit 6, and the local newspaper, see Exhibit 7. 17. It is in serving his family and his country and its citizens in the twilight of his life that Bob Rackstraw was ambushed by Tom Colbert and his co-conspirators, Mark Zayed, Jim Forbes, and other members of their gang in Last Master Outlaw. The ambushes initially consisted of inquiring and soliciting type phone calls, with plaintiffs giving accolades to Bob Rackstraw's heroic conduct in combat, having been awarded numerous combat medals like the Bronze Star, 37 Air Medals, 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses, the Silver Star, etc., and asking for his participation in a documentary with other individuals that had served in the Vietnam War. Apparently, the plaintiff opened classified military documents by lying about who he was and displayed them in this case and his LMO book and History Channel airing, oddly venue of the plaintiff's hatred. They told Rackstraw that if he confessed to a crime he did not commit, that he would be a folk hero and receive millions of dollars and forever legal representation in return, living in luxury and paradise, etc., etc. These offers in reality turned out to be phony, ruthless, heartless attacks on veterans everywhere, and a ruse that proved to be the first of a huge magnitude of out-and-out lies and untruths by the fake news journalist gangster plaintiffs who laughed about their nefarious murderous conduct and printed in the LMO congratulating themselves. Then the harassments and ambushes of Rackstraw became more intense from 2012 onward and began causing health problems for Bob Rackstraw. A direct cause of Bob's dramatic escalation of his blood pressure, which began frequent spikes of 198 over 112 and climaxed to 220 over 125 in 2013, subsequent to the ambushes and harassments which resulted in a trip to ER and medications. But the harassments became worse and culminated in Bob Rackstraw suffering a stress-induced heart attack. 19. Friend of the court will deviate momentarily and ask the individuals in judgment in this court to place themselves in the position of having to personally endure what has been brought on by what can only be described as a nefarious, psychopathic group of criminal, garbage media people from their swamp. Could you? Please think very carefully about that as you sit in constitutional judgment. What is your life and that of your family and children and grandchildren worth? Sitting in constitutional judgment under justice for all, you can and should stop it in the name of justice. 20. In 2013, Colbert, Forbes, and Zayed apparently deciding that their harassments had not yet caused Bob Rackstraw's death, so they decided, in addition to 2 camera crews, then hire 3 murder-for-hire assassins with assault weapons to, quote, interview Rackstraw. See page 207 in Last Master Outlaw. And their fingers inch closer to gun triggers. Page 213, in Colbert's book being sold in this court. Murder for hire and lying in wait at sec are federal offenses, and this court has jurisdiction. See Exhibit 8, 2 pages. 21. Fortunately, the murder for hire gang members were thwarted by 2 elderly ladies inquiring about what the media gang was up to, wherein the gang members told them that they were after D.B. Cooper. One of them had heard of it. And this is on page 228 of Last Master Outlaw. This resulted in rumors being spread throughout the community and established disabled veteran business being totally destroyed by rumors initiated by the Colbert killers and blatant displays on the internet, on TV, and printed media. It is believed that without the God-sent timely appearance of these 2 kindly elderly ladies, the Colbert, quote, journalists, murder-for-hire team would have accomplished what they were hired by Colbert to do, murder Bob Rackstraw. Obviously, the trigger-happy goons with assault weapons were not there to conduct a, quote, normal media interview. They were hired to kill Rackstraw. All of this is in Colbert's book, Last Master Outlaw, before this court. A true confession of guilt by the plaintiffs. All the elements of murder for hire and lying in wait are there. Friend of the court asked the court to take legal notice and declare the law and issue a warrant for the arrest of Tom Colbert, Mark Zayed, Jim Forbes, and their accomplices. 22. It is well established that travel to the location and use of communications satisfies interstate, also intrastate satisfies. 2. The intent to murder, admitted and documented. 3. Being paid. Court issues warrant for arrest to FBI. 23. The aforementioned is noted in the media ambush in 2013 and can be seen on the History Channel documentary referred to by plaintiffs in this case when Rackstraw had to leave the media ambush to go to the doctor, and specifically stated by his friend in that History Channel documentary, D.B. Cooper, Case Closed, about his blood pressure, all of which is also incorporated within the submissions by the plaintiffs in this case, now in this case in the court. 24. As a direct result of the demands to confess to a crime he did not commit and the fake news media onslaughts and demands by Colbert, Forbes, Zayed, and their co-conspirators, in 2013, Mr. Rackstraw suffered a deadly hypertension heart attack and was rushed to the hospital, where he in fact died on a gurney on the way to the ER. The medical staff tried various emergency procedures to no avail, then referred to the paddles. After 12 high-voltage shock applications, Rackstraw began breathing to the surprise of the medical staff, who had just given their very last attempt to restore life. Subsequently, a pacemaker and medical devices were installed and numerous medications which Rackstraw has to take daily for the rest of his life or die again. The stressful death of Bob Rackstraw was a direct cause of the harassing, accusatory onslaughts and actions of Colbert, Forbes, Zayed, and their co-conspirators, accomplices, producers, and sponsors, and financial backers et al. Friend of the court found out from a reliable source that when Colbert was confronted with the what-if question, if Rackstraw dies, his response was a smirk, quote, "Then I can say whatever I want. It's easy now as he is disabled and penniless, but easier if he were dead," unquote. 25. Given the questionable conduct of the fake news Colbert gang, the questions must be asked about why in the world would they want those government agencies to release their files in this nefarious bunch of sociopaths, psychopaths under a false FOIA? That's Freedom of Information Act. The Colbert Gang's conduct can only be compared to those of the Third Reich. Falsify, manipulate, distort, modify, pile up as much unrelated negativity as one can, and maybe it will kill somebody. So the next question is, where would they take the information if it were allowed? Heinrich Himmler's Third Reich lab? That is one of the few labs that had a history of distorting evidence and facts for the purpose of murdering millions via the legal system at that time in Germany under the Qualified Persons Act, et seq., employing young prosecutors and judges to the bench who would ignore the Constitution of Germany at the time. Friend of the Court notes, the constitutional law judges were re-employed after 1950 to restore order. Thank God that America today is not Nazi Germany. 26. The Bureau has the right to refuse FOIA demand of the plaintiffs because release would be harmful to the government or private interest, et seq., and as provided for in exemptions 1 through 9, et seq. In that regard, Bob Rackstraw has a private interest and will assist the FBI wherever and whenever asked, as he has in the past for all government agencies, such as the correct envelope can be found. 27. However, any granting of the FOIA demand the plaintiffs by this court could be a very slippery slope, given the fact that, among others, Apple is suing the FBI in a similar lawsuit to obtain the information about how the Bureau was able to crack the code of Apple's iPhone, and this would set a dangerous precedent for this case. So Bob Rackstraw suggests to the court that it might consider the denial of the FOIA request in this case so that both the Bureau and the security of America can be protected, as far too many anti-American individuals are within our great nation, notwithstanding those that have been allowed into our nation and killed our people. 28. The actions of the plaintiff have not succeeded in procuring the exact, quote, proof that the Bureau has consistently required for the past 40 years, to wit, the parachute, the money. Any other allegations, innuendos, false accusations, defamation, destruction of persons and their constitutional rights must be stopped by this court. Which friend of the court suggests this court has a constitutional sworn duty to do so. 29. Denial of equal protection under the law, personal and constitutional rights, not just any type of rights, for false news gangs calling themselves journalists, is a Fifth Amendment abuse of power. 30. Premeditated conspiracy with malice aforethought, malice of fact, murder for hire, and lying in wait to deny Bob Rackstraw of his personal, civil, and constitutional rights, and in fact did raise Bob Rackstraw's blood pressure to such dangerous levels as a direct result of the actions of the plaintiff that he did in fact suffer a heart attack that killed him, and only through technology paddles was he brought back to life. In his death, Bob Rackstraw received a divine vision. That's why he's here for the rights of all Americans, and most especially veterans. The following damages are claims, but not limited to actual, compensatory, consequential, continuing, criminal, exemplary, expectancy, fee damages, foreseeable, future, general, hedonic, inadequate, incidental, inseparable, necessary, pecuniary, proximate, remote, resuscitory, severance, special, speculative, statutory, substantial, temporary, and other such and further damages as this court deems necessarily appropriate. Relief sought. 32. The following are orders requested of this court to include but not limited to. 33. Quantum merit in favor of friend of the court Rackstraw. Recovery of every penny that the plaintiffs, their producers, media corporations et al. Received for broadcasting every microsecond of anything related to Bob Rackstraw, and it will be justifiably passed on to him without question. In favor, amici Rackstraw, unjust enrichment, utilizing name and likeness without compensation. 35. In favor of amici Rackstraw, promissory estoppel, a clear and unambiguous, we will make you a, and then he has about $10 signs, in its terms, reliance by the party to being reasonable and foreseeable, and injury to the party, Bob Rackstraw, as a result, but it was fake news and illegal extortion. 36. Detrimental reliance. Then he has the letter K equals consent. Test equals reliance, reliant upon the plaintiffs to reveal the truth. None happened. In favor of Rackstraw, intentional infliction of mental, physical, and emotional distress. 38. In favor of Rackstraw, defamation per se with malice, told the whole world that Bob Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper. 39. In favor of Rackstraw, economic terrorism by telling everyone who would listen during a media and assault weapons ambush that Bob Rackstraw was D.B. Cooper. And as a direct result, the business location he had helped build for over 5 years was the benefit of veterans and disabled veterans was totally wiped out. 40. Wherefore, Bob Rackstraw respectfully moves this court to issue a warrant for the arrest of Tom Colbert, Mark Zayed, Jim Forbes, and does 1 through 100 as may be determined by FBI and Rackstraw's discovery and investigations, and those that may be held as co-conspirators and accomplices, to commit a premeditated with malice and aforethought, documented and admitted, and confessed to murder for hire crime scheme in this matter. 18 U.S. Code, paragraph 1958, as well as squaring within the meaning of the RICO Act, and lying in wait and intentional with malice and infliction of emotional and mental distress and personal injury. A prima facie case of intentional infliction of emotional and mental and physical distress and such other and further crimes as this court may consider applicable, and in addition brought to the attention of the FBI and DOJ. Note that the elements of the statute are satisfied as ruled by federal courts, including the travel or use of facilities in interstate commerce via the use of vehicles, the internet, cell phones, etc. 49. Court order injunction preventing all the plaintiffs and each of them and any other entity to retain and not destroy any evidence of any kind relating to this case. 42. Court order to cease and desist to the plaintiffs and each of them are airing and revealing anything in regard to Rackstraw, as Colbert is contacting various individuals under false claims and instructing them to impersonate past friends, associates, and family on social media, triggering international speculation and more manure to his pile. 43A. Court order and injunction to the History Channel, cease and desist any further showing of anything implementing Bob Rackstraw in the D.B. Cooper case without his authorization or compensation. Re-aired 11 times with impunity. And he has the date February 26, 2017, and subsequent to the cease and desist sent on or about the 6th of July, 2016. See Exhibit 3, which is 2 pages long. And 43B, a civil asset seizure conducted by all federal agencies, including but not limited to the FBI, the IRS, etc., of all detectable or discoverable physical and monetary assets of Tim Colbert, Mark Zayed, Jim Forbes, the History Channel, the Hearst and Disney Corporations, and does 1 through 50 etc., and their sponsors to assure that said assets remain in the possession of the government as required by law and to be distributed as determined by a court of the proper jurisdiction. an injunction against the plaintiffs and each of them ordering them to cease and desist with any further contact or harassment of Bob Rackstraw, his family, or any of his past friends, associates, or relations without first contacting this court about who, what, when, and where with specific information as to just what they're looking for and the relevance of each item or contact other than contributing to furtherance of their pile of manure. D. An injunction prohibiting the History Channel, the Hearst Corporation, and the Disney Corporation or any other media from televising or distributing any type of media or information of any type or source about Bob Rackstraw, his family or his associates, friends, at all, about any relationship to the D.B. Cooper event without the express written permission of Bob Rackstraw. E. Reject the plaintiff's assertion that he is a, quote, journalist to avoid paying fees, as he is in fact holding himself out now as a, quote, producer with tons of money illegally obtained from his manure pile. He is fully capable of paying any and all court expenses, notwithstanding one of his co-conspirators in this case, Mark Zayed, who has stated previously that he has a personal financial interest in the debacle as well as many others, a fraud upon the court by both Colbert and Zayed. Apple is demanding under FOIA that the FBI release information on how it was able to hack the iPhone. Therefore, it is suggested to this court that it not order the FBI to release anything to the plaintiffs in this case, as it is just a fishing expedition to gather more manure for their fake news manure pile, and they have not specifically stated that it is to prove Bob Rackstraw is D.B. Cooper, as they maliciously, knowingly, and falsely stated. Perhaps they lied about that also, and for such other and further relief as this court deems necessary and proper, as this court has jurisdiction in this matter. And then he has a Latin phrase which he then translates into English, the English saying, the wicked and malicious designs of men must be thwarted by this court. Lastly, Bob Rackstraw believes that the real D.B. Cooper suspect probably survived and by this time most likely died subsequent to the Nordjak event of injuries or, if nothing else, old age. 45. It would seem reasonable that a lawsuit should be filed in the amount of $1 billion against the fake news conspirators, accomplices, their owners, sponsors, producers, directors, et al. See Exhibit 9. Bob Rackstraw prays for relief. Please don't permit them to kill me again. Make them get the right envelope! Exclamation point. Thank you, and respectfully submitted. Bob Rackstraw. Namiki and victim, disabled homeless veteran pro se. And he gives his phone number and the date. And it's interesting that he's a homeless vet, but he has like 6 children and 14 grandchildren. At least one of them is old enough to be giving birth to a great-grandchild. Is nobody in his family concerned about his welfare to give him shelter? That must say something about him. Anyway, I think that that's all that I will read. He does provide some further documents with people's names that he wants sued or to give him money, and I will include a line drawing of stick figures shoveling manure, which he shows is representative of Tom Colbert. Anyway, I've done many other videos of D.B. Cooper, including one where I look at the Rackstraw case and explain why he is not a good candidate for it. I think that from what I've read, it's clear that he was not mentally well towards the end of his life. Who knows if he was mentally well enough to carry out successfully the D.B. Cooper case? I certainly don't think so. Most researchers don't think so. In fact, Mr. Colbert and a few of his associates seem to be the only ones that think that Rackstraw was a good candidate. According to the eyewitnesses on the plane, the stewardesses said that his picture doesn't look like the man that they remember. Certainly, one ID photo of Rackstraw does kind of look like Cooper, but other photos of him from soon after don't look at don't look like him at all. So I know that witnesses' perceptions of things can become distorted over time. They're not necessarily good at describing the person to sketch artists. We all know that the first sketch looks quite a bit different than subsequent D.B. Cooper sketches. Anyway, I'm going to end there. Please do leave a comment. I enjoy reading people's comments, and I do eventually get back to answering all comments that I get. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so and check out my other videos. Thank you so much.